Welcome to Meet Miss Jess, where we discuss education, relationships, and trends in sustainable fashion. Each week, we'll share stories and insights to cultivate a more empathetic and inclusive world. Thank you for being a guest on my new podcast, Meet Miss Jess VR. And a shout out to Joshua T. Berglund and the World's Mayor Experience for producing and making this whole experience great for everyone and a win-win. So it's a pleasure to meet you. I've been looking forward to it. I looked at some of your art and checked out some of the books that you write. And I would love to get to know kind of a bit about your journey and just how you got to where you are now.
Sure. Well, I started out as a writer when I was 9 years old. I got into reading with Calvin and Hobbes, and back then was sort of creating comics of my own. I got into writing prose fiction when I was 12, and I've been doing that ever since. But I also have been an editor. I edited an anthology of called Divergent Realms, Science Fiction and Fantasy Stories about Neurodivergence, which is an anthology of 14 stories about neurodivergent characters written by neurodivergent writers. And I came up with that because going back to Calvin and Hobbes, I wasn't really interested in reading when I was younger because I didn't feel like I could relate to any of the characters. I'm an autistic person, and I read Calvin and Hobbes, and that character Calvin immediately jumped out as feeling very similar to myself. Kind of big imagination, always sort of problems with self-control, struggling to make friends. I saw myself in that. And so, like, Divergent Realms then is sort of trying to create stories that people who are different can see themselves in. It has stories written by people with a variety of sort of neurodivergencies, such as autism, ADHD, OCD, even I got a story from someone who suffers from migraines, stuff like that. And so, and those are all stories that are also about characters that deal with those things. So the hope is that readers who are different, who sort of maybe have autism or ADHD or some other form of neurodivergence, can see themselves in those characters.
Well, I think that's brilliant. And it's so important because we all are kind of in a society where we do best if we can fit in with everyone and make life easier for everyone around us. But to really enjoy life and to see that it's okay to be who we are, because we see it outside of ourselves too, to make us feel like we belong a little bit more. I could see this this helping with that.
Yeah, that's my hope.
Sorry to interrupt. I got so excited. I think it's so inspiring. I mean, I have daughters, so to know that they're growing up in a world where people who are unique are speaking up and showing their uniquenesses is going to give them a safe place where they can also feel it's okay to do that themselves.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy to be participating in trying to create that kind of world.
So do you have any projects coming up that you're working on?
Well, let's see. What I tend to write is very different from what Divergent Realms is, which is science fiction and fantasy stories that are mainly kind of for the audience of kind of for all audiences. Like the stories are maybe PG-13 at worst. But what I typically write myself is horror, very dark horror, and bizarro, which is the genre of just write the weirdest thing you could possibly think of, and it's usually bizarro books are they often have horror elements. They're usually very irreverent, a lot of horror and comedy, but bizarro can be a lot of different things. So I write that, and I write horror, and I just had a novella released by Planet Bizarro Press that is called, well, the title is a little inappropriate.
Okay.
It's Shit, Love, and Burgers.
I saw that.
Oh, yes.
Where do you get your artwork from?
Well, my publisher at Planet Bizarro hired an artist, and I'm actually not sure who that was for this particular book. But yeah, and then later this year, I'm going to release either a collection of short bizarro stories or a short novel in that genre. Both are finished. It's just up to a few factors that will determine which one I release first.
That's cool. So when you were growing up, did you write throughout your childhood?
I did.
Was it like an outlet for you, since you said you didn't enjoy reading because you couldn't relate to people? Did the writing help express, what was going on inside of you?
Yes, I think so. So I have a lot of difficulty communicating with people. At least verbally. Verbal communication is very difficult for me. So I think it was almost kind of an obvious thing to turn to writing to be able to express my thoughts to the world when I struggled to do that through speaking.
So can I ask you, because I actually have the same sort of thing, where I find writing is far easier to communicate what I want to communicate in a way that is most effective. But when speaking, I think I overthink a lot because I can see all the different variables and perspectives and how things might be misinterpreted and yada yada. I think that's one of the things that makes it easier to communicate in writing. But what do you think your reasoning is that it's challenging to communicate verbally and easier to communicate in writing?
Well, when I'm speaking, I just find that I can't find my thoughts very easily. And I'm not exactly sure why that is. I think anxiety is a part of it. But it's definitely, it has a lot to do with being autistic, for sure. Maybe some of my ADHD affects that as well.
So can I ask, there's all these different diagnoses, and that they're really hard to get. They're hard to understand where people fit, because it almost seems to me more like a spectrum, like a rainbow of different parts of our brains, and how they maybe are more so in one area than the other. But ultimately, it's our brains working differently than others, is how I see it. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, well, it is basically, yeah, I mean, autism is a spectrum disorder where there are people have all kinds of different ways that they experience it and express it, but it is fundamentally a different way of thinking than the term for people who aren't neurodivergent is neurotypical, than how they think and perceive the world. And that can be the same too with ADHD, OCD, these things. It's a complete different, at least with autism, it's a completely different brainwire. And so, sorry, I'm losing my
No,
thoughts
it's okay. When did you start to learn about autism, or did you realize that you were on the spectrum? How did that play out in your life?
Well, I guess I was in third grade, I think. My parents took me to a therapist to be sort of to try to get some insight as to why I was always like acting out in class, or struggling to know the sort of unspoken social rules of playing and communicating with other children. So they took me to a therapist who did I guess some testing, and I think at the time I was diagnosed with ADHD and I think oppositional defiant disorder, which is I think something that really is only present in kids. But I was diagnosed with those two things, and I guess autism can be a challenging thing to diagnose, because this report that my parents received that I still have now says something to the effect of, because most people who are on the autism spectrum have what they call special interests, which is sort of that people who are autistic tend to form deep obsessions with very narrow topics of interest, and I don't so much have that aspect of autism. So back then, what this report said was that I don't have autism because I don't display that particular symptom. Although after that, my therapist essentially told me that although the report said one thing, that I was essentially I essentially had enough symptoms of autism that he referred to me as being an autistic person. It's just that officially I couldn't get that diagnosis because of what the criteria were at the time. And when I was 29, I got retested, and the criteria have changed. So now I do have an official autism diagnosis. But ever since I was 9 years old, well, no, I guess like 10 maybe, I knew that I had it because my therapist told me that I did.
Yeah. as an adult getting an assessment, where are you located?
Fort Collins, Colorado.
Okay. So how challenging or simple was the process to get assessed as an adult?
Well, I think it can be more challenging for a lot of people, but I got lucky. I just told this other therapist that I was working with at that time that I didn't have an official autism diagnosis, even though I'd known that I was autistic since I was 10 or whatever, and that I kind of wanted to get that on paper. And she said that she could arrange for me to be tested completely for free, which that's not usually.
No, that's not normal at all.
But yeah, that was how it happened for me.
So why was it important to you to get it on paper?
Well, at the time I was trying to pursue some services for which it would have been useful to have that documentation. I ended up not pursuing those services after that, but it just sort of it got me to thinking that it could be helpful if there were services that I wanted to pursue where I would be more likely to receive those if I had documentation of having a disorder. Well, that was the one reason, and also I think it's just it's for validation purposes. I mean, I was essentially, although a therapist had told me I was autistic, officially I was essentially self-diagnosed until I was 29 years old, and I just wanted the sort of validation of having that be officially recognized.
Do you feel like it made your reality more real with the diagnosis?
No, I think that had been my reality for so long that I already knew what the diagnosis was going to be. Well, if I had received a different diagnosis, I probably would have just gone to a different therapist, because that would have, I don't see how that could have been correct if that had been the case, but obviously it wasn't.
Right. So did you just want the outside world to see you as you were?
I think I think it was more just, it's hard to say, kind of. It's sort of hard to put into words feeling that validation. But I mean, everyone I knew, I've known in my life already knew I was autistic, and I already knew I was autistic, but there's just a kind of symbolic thing of having it on paper means something to me in a way that, I don't know.
Yeah, so I understand. I believe we should all have the right to assessments, to have information confirmed about our own mental health, so that we can improve, so that we can make other people aware of who we are and how we operate, and figure out ways to work together where everyone can be successful in this world and accepted, and to create a more inclusive place to live. So I develop virtual reality experiences called Miss Jess VR, and I use AI to develop these experiences that teach different things. So we could teach sustainable fishing practices in Ghana. We could do whatever your imagination can think of, we could do. So if you could create an experience in virtual reality to show others what it's like in your brain, what your perceptions are like, and what maybe you're going through or what you're striving to be, what kind of virtual reality experience would you create?
Well, that's hard to say. It would definitely be really hard to capture the sort of experience of being autistic. I think one way that I guess would be obvious, but kind not particularly pleasant, was that if there was a VR simulation that recreated the experience of sensory overload that a lot of people with autism experience. I don't know. It would that would be something that would be fairly easy to create through a VR headset. I think that would, I guess, well, I mean, I don't know why somebody would want to subject it themselves to it, unless maybe they had someone they know who's autistic, who's always having like sensory meltdowns or something, and they want to try to understand that better. Or there could also be something that is like maybe a simulation of like an autistic school experience or something. That maybe is narrated with thoughts of like what an autistic person might be thinking as they're going, as they're trying to talk to people at school or something. The struggles of doing that, or I don't know.
No, those are great, and I touch on those a lot. I personally, I have issues with noises. So like growing up at the dinner table, my dad would eat really, really loud, like smacking, and it's traumatizing. I still can't handle that external sound. But it would be nice, even loved ones, you can tell them like, I can't handle this. Can you like help? And they might agree to it, but for them, and even for us to expect them to remember these things, it puts more stress on the situation. And it would be nice to have more awareness in general, to have workplaces adopt practices like training their management, their staff on inclusion, and showing them through VR simulations what it's like for other people, so that we experience it, and we don't have to be told over and over again like we can't handle this action. They just remember, oh, this makes them feel this way. I'm going to be respectful of that when I'm around them, or in general, depending on what it is. So I love your answers, and thank you for that. And thank you for talking about this too.
Oh,
so,
of course.
My other thing is, I believe that we, understanding who we are and learning more about who we are and who other people are, we are coming into a place where we get to embrace our uniquenesses, and those are our strengths, the things that make us happy to live life, the things that fuel us. And I think we're all going to be able to be kind of like real life superheroes by recognizing our weaknesses and living in our strengths. So if you were a superhero, what would your superpower be, your superhero name, and your costume?
Well, the costume, I mean, I guess I have this t-shirt that says celebrate neurodiversity with like a brain that's different colors, and I don't know, I really like that shirt, so my costume would probably look something like that.
That's nice.
And the superpower, I mean, yeah, that's harder for me to think of. I mean, maybe I'd have a superhuman writing ability or something. I don't know. I could be better than Shakespeare because my brain is juiced up with superpowers. I don't know.
Yeah. Do you use AI to write?
Not really.
I highly recommend just playing around with it because I feel like you'll naturally grasp how to communicate with it, and it's going to help you learn about different techniques and different parts of yourself. I think it would be I think you would enjoy it. Sorry to interrupt. So what would your name be?
The name. Yeah, I'm not great with names.
Okay, well, we'll come back to that. I just want to say thank you for your time. I think it's very valuable. It's very important that you are out here sharing your unique journey and your experiences that most people don't know about. And nobody will know about it until more people like yourself tell them about it. So thank you for that. Thank you to the World's Mayor Experience for this production and the Marine Foundation joining people through the sea to celebrate inclusion and technology and education. So any place that people can find you and anything else people you want to call out, now's your time.
Well, let's see. There's RileyOdellWriter.com is my website. Just RileyOdell writer.com. My books are on Amazon. That's the only platform that I have them on for now. But Divergent Realms and all my other stuff is on there. And let's see. I lost my other thought.
Okay, well, we'll make sure we get all the info, and Joshua's going to put together media kits with all the links and all the good stuff so we don't actually have to worry about it, which is kind of awesome. But thank you again, and I wish you the best in everything you do.
All right. Thank you.